Hey guys, welcome to the first Earthen Rangers edible, medicinal, and survival uses video of wild plants. Today we're going to be talking about a very special California native plant, which is the California Buckeye Tree. The reason why I'm choosing to talk about the California Buckeye Tree first is because, as you can see right behind me, it's in full bloom, which is a really special characteristic of this tree. They get these beautiful cones of flowers, which smell absolutely amazing. So you got to go check them out, especially if you live in California. They're abundant right now. Really an important tree as far as ecosystem services, because this tree prevents erosion, especially in areas like riparian zones. So really important. But let's go ahead and dive into those properties. We're going to start with one of my favorite ones. When this tree is done flowering, the flowers will recede. And at the end of the flowers, there will be what's called Buckeye Nuts. Those nuts you can take and grind into a powder, much like I have here. And this is an all-natural fish stun. That's right. So if you're in a survival situation and you see a fish swimming in a stream, you can take out a handful of Buckeye nut powder, throw it on top of the water, and it'll have an instant chemical reaction with H2O, thus stunning the fish for about 25 to 35 seconds. Really an awesome, magical trait and property to the California Buckeye Tree. One of the other cool things about the nuts is if you leach them, much like you would leach acorns from oaks, you can actually use the California Buckeye nut as an emergency food source. Now I say emergency food source because you don't want to eat too much of it. This tree does actually have a toxicity level to it. In addition, I've cooked with California Buckeye nut trees before, and you know, when it comes to wild edibles, I can always find something that I really appreciate about that wild edible, whether it's flavor, texture, whatever that may be. Not the Buckeye nut. It tastes god-awful, really bad. I've even done things like take box elder syrup, which is in the maple family, mix it in, and make some Buckeye nut cookies. No good, but still a fun property to talk about. The last property that I'm going to talk about with the California Buckeye Tree is the branches themselves can be used to make hand drill spindles. As you see here, I have a hand drill spindle from a Buckeye tree. You've probably seen this in different forms of media where some guy or girl's hunched over, spinning away at a hand drill spindle into a fireboard to create friction fires. Buckeye tree is one of my favorite plants to make hand drill fires with, even though it can be a little bit harder just because the wood is a little bit tougher than other typical spindles. But still, it's one of my favorites and I absolutely love it. Last thing I want to talk about real quick is just the leaf system. I'm going to bring this in here, and as you can see, this is actually one leaf, and it's made up of 5 leaflets. And so that's one identification property to finding this tree in your area. I believe that's called palmately compound leaf system. And we also have, again, these cone flowers, so be sure to check that out. Last little identification tool I'll leave you with is the trunk. The trunk of these trees are always very, very short. Whether they're 2, 3, 4, 5 feet tall. On average, you're only seeing a trunk on the California Buckeye tree that's about a foot, maybe a foot and a half off the ground. Now that's not always true, so again, you need to always make sure that you're identifying correctly and 100% correctly before you harvest anything, and make sure to sustainably harvest as well in an eco-friendly way. If you're going to harvest Buckeye nuts from this tree or another tree like it, make sure you only take about 1/10 of the nuts from the tree. This is one of my personal favorite trees. It's kind of like an old grandfather Buckeye, but if I were to harvest from this tree, I'd even probably take like 1/20th or 1/30th of the Buckeye nuts from this tree and leave the rest for the little critters. Deer do eat the young leaves, so look for sign tracking of nibbles out of the leaves. In addition, squirrels can eat small quantities of the Buckeye nuts when there's not enough acorns to sustain them throughout the winter. And surprisingly enough, Ohlonies would use them in the same way. Native Americans in this area would use the Buckeye nut tree as an emergency food source, just like we can in primitive survival situations. Thank you so much for joining me for the first plant. This is again the California Buckeye Tree for the edible, medicinal, and survival property uses of wild plant series. check in again next week and we'll be talking about another wild plant with those wonderful properties. As always, stay aware and protect.